Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com as well as the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel. We continue on with the class of 1999 and we're into a bit of a run here for the most part that's going to be dominated with comedy, which I'm personally a bit relieved for because of the fact that it feels like the first part of this journey through 1999 has been dominated by more dramatic fare or big action movies and stuff like that. So it's good to get a sense of the comedy of the year. And one of the biggest comedies to come out in 1999 was Paul and Chris White's American Pie, which came out in July of 1999 during the summer movie season and was a fairly decent hit. It wasn't exactly one of the bigger hits of the year, but was still a reasonable sized success, and it spawned several sequels, some theatrical, many more on DVD and Blu-ray. And to discuss the film, I'm joined by a friend of mine who's been on the podcast before. We've talked about Dark City and The Truman Show and horror. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Marv Dickey. Thank you for joining me today, Marv.
Anytime, Brian. I love discussing movies with you.
So I have a confession about American Pie, in that I actually did not see this in theaters.
Really?
I will admit, so when the trailer first started coming out, it's like I was in my early 20s by this point, so I wasn't a teenager, and I really hadn't gotten into teen movies in really any way in my life growing up. So it's like I never really got into, I've got to see this movie and this movie and this movie. I was kind of turned off by the trailer. It seemed to be playing up the raunch and the body material, and that really wasn't my thing. That wasn't really something that I had come to appreciate over the years. It's surprising given knowing me now, but I wasn't a huge Kevin Smith fan. I was starting to come around to him with Chasing Amy, and then later in this year with Dogma. But with the Farrelly Brothers, there's something about Mary came out the previous year, and I hated that movie. I couldn't stand that movie. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't get why it was such a big hit. So
Ouch.
I sort of American Pie seemed to be in that same camp when the trailers came out. So I just didn't see it, which is ironic because of the fact that one of my favorite movies from 1999 is South Park: Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. But I had been a South Park fan, so that kind of made sense. I eventually saw American Pie on video the next year in 2000 and was very pleasantly surprised. And I became a fan of the franchise. I saw American Pie 2 and 3 in theaters, although I skipped the direct-to-DVD spinoffs and sequels and stuff like that. And so that's kind of my history on American Pie. Marv, what is your history? Is this something you saw in theaters?
I did get to see it in theaters. Opening night, actually. My experience was, it was kind of a surprise to me. To me, I was just getting into my own. I was a Kevin Smith fan at that point, because it was after Mallrats when I discovered Kevin Smith, but before Chasing Amy. It was hard to track down a copy of Chasing Amy in a small town in Michigan. Tell me, it's especially with their liberal, or not liberal, their very conservative thoughts. But anyway, the video store was for more the films that weren't blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
the theater for me was for the films that were blockbusters. Like 1999, of course, we went and saw Phantom Menace at the midnight show. You know, I saw Spy Who Shagged Me.
Mm-hmm.
It was the sequels or the bigger budget action films and I was not really a film snob, but I was just like, I'll watch like subtitled French film or Japanese horror or something, but that's for home video. The big blockbusters, you know, for comedies and stuff. Like I did see Something Out Mary. I loved it. I got the VHS when it came out, you know, like the first day, and I watched it. I was tired of it. I have the DVD, but I've watched it once since like 2002. I still have it, but I just burned myself out on that, and it's hard to go back to a comedy once you kind of burned out on it.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what film I was seeing, but it was a big film from Universal, and then playing before that was the trailer for American Pie. American Pie would traditionally fall into I'll wait till home video to see that one. But when I saw the trailer, I was just like, that looks really good. It looks like it could be possibly pretty darn hilarious. So it was coming out. Nothing was like really playing at the time that I hadn't seen, according to my rule of big budget versus small budget. And so I decided with a couple of my friends to be like, look, American Pie's coming out tonight. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, being, let's see, 1999, I was 20 going on 21 later that year. So I was 20 years old. My friends were like 19 and 18. Mm-hmm. So we load up, we go see the movie. The theater opening night was not packed. You know, so I thought, oh, this movie may bomb.
Yeah.
You know, but we're here. We paid our I think at the time it was like $5.50 for a ticket, like $2 for a popcorn and soda. Those are the days, right?
Yeah, I know.
Being that you work in the biz.
Yeah.
We went and saw it, and I was actually blown away. I was like, my cheeks were hurting, like from smiling at scenes. I didn't fully laugh out loud to much of it, mostly Jim's dad stuff and the trouble that Jim gets into. I laughed out loud, but the movie makes me smile. Mm-hmm. And it made me smile that night, and I kind of fell in love with it. And I missed part 2 in theaters because of personal issues and lack of funds and places to live. But I picked up with American Wedding, and I am a fan of the direct-to-DVD ones. They do have their moments, and all the way up through American Reunion. So that's my experience with American Pie. I saw it opening night, and I fell in love.
Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that you said that your cheeks were hurting because you smiled more than really laughing, I think that points to my overall impression of the movie, in that it makes me smile more and it makes me laugh. There are some very funny things about this movie. There are some very funny line deliveries and moments and stuff like that. And Eugene Levy as Jim's dad is a big part of that. I don't know how the movie is not overly funny, but it's the thing that it is, and that I think makes it still entertaining, is that it's very sincere about what it's doing, about the type of story that it's telling, and it's basically a straight narrow coming of age story about 4 friends who are trying to get laid for the first time in their senior year of high school. That's all it is. And then you see the women in their lives. You see other guys like Sean William Scott as Stifler. You see, you have secondary characters like John Cho's character and Jim's dad. And then you just basically the writer and the directors basically populate this world with characters that you might recognize for one reason or another, and it's just a very pleasant movie. It's a very sincere movie about what it's doing. It's a very genuine thing about what it's doing, and I think that's one of the reasons it works as well as it does.
I agree. Plus, the characters they're well written.
Yeah.
Jim, the clumsy every guy. There's the Kevin, who's kind of the douchebag, who, who hasn't got there yet, but he feels like he should have already.
Yeah.
Oz, the jock. But it doesn't make sense that these guys would be friends unless this core group have been friends since they were like 5, like kindergarten all the way through high school, and they all support each other when they go off in their own directions. It doesn't make sense that the jock would be hanging out with the nerd, who would be hanging out with the sophisticated art guy.
Yeah.
Which is Finch.
Yeah.
But I do agree and it's very accurate to what high school life really is. Sex is important to high schoolers. It's in the forefront of discussion. It's in the forefront of their brains.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't mine. And I like how, like, you used the genuine. It's real, and it felt real because I was class of 97 first, and then I was class of 98 later on. I had a bad first ninth grade year. But it spoke to me, like, because sadly enough, I was Jim.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's like I was definitely much more like Jim than, and I think, and that it kind of makes sense that he's the primary focal point of the movie, and Jason Biggs is really really enjoyable in the role. He does exactly what the role gives him, and he's basically somebody who he's the one who's really trying to figure things out. He doesn't necessarily have clear ideas about how this is supposed to go. He's the one who's experimenting more often than not in these movies, in this movie. And Oz thinks he has one idea about. Kevin thinks he has another idea about. Finch has another idea about it. And Jim's the one who is kind of lost in it. And that sense of, I'm trying to figure things out. The movie starts out with him watching scrambled porn. I mean, that's honestly like the best first shot of this entire movie, because of the fact that it sets up Jim so perfectly, because of the fact that it's about him trying to figure shit out.
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl bounced around a room trying to find the exit, which is sex.
Yeah.
Hush.
But yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is very much a very standard high school teen movie, and it's really the characters that bring it through and make it entertaining.
I made a claim, kind of a prediction, so to speak. It may not have fully come true, but the night I saw it and I loved it, and I said, this is going to be the 90s version of The Breakfast Club. Because the characters are written so well, the dialogue is really good. Yeah. Except for there are a few jokes that makes me like cringe. Like in the very beginning when Oz says, like, I was watching Lifetime Supply of Pantyhose or whatever.
Yeah,
I was like, God, I can't take that joke anymore. But yeah, I compared it. I said, this is going to be the 90s version of The Breakfast Club. The 70s kids had like Animal House. 80s kids got Breakfast Club. 90s kids are going to have American Pie. And I don't know how true that statement is, but from my angle, I think I was kind of correct.
Yeah, and I and it's weird because of the fact that, I mean, I think you could make a point for, I certainly think you can make that point with American Pie to a certain extent, but I mean, I know some people would also kind of say, well, maybe Dazed and Confused as well.
That's true.
As being more of a Breakfast Club. But I mean, that's a movie that's set in a very specific time and place. Like this, yes, I mean, is very much, it follows, it's very clearly in the 90s, but it doesn't knock you over the head with 90s pop culture and 90s attitudes, 90s slang and stuff like that. So it's very much it is something that is a little timeless in that respect. So, I mean, I would agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, I think sort of like this and Dazed and Confused might sort of share it, but I mean, they're definitely two sides of the same coin, I think.
Yeah, they're this Dazed and Confused spoke to '90s kids, like, as through the '70s, and American Pie, I would say, is more of a time capsule for what the late '90s truly were.
Yeah.
As far as, like, especially with, like, technology, because some of it's a bit some of it is a bit off, like the webcam thing with the sending emails to. I haven't been to school since, like, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the schools do emails anymore, or is there, like, Facebook pages for that the schools, I don't know.
I'm not really completely sure either, but I mean, it would still be very, like, you're not, like, even in high school, I have a hard time believing that you would be capable of sending an email to everybody in the school.
With one click.
With one click, and not realize that that's happening. Because chances are you've got email addresses for your clique of friends, maybe the teachers and other administrators, and that's about it. Chances are, I mean, that is basically that's a movie trope right there. Like,
yes, it is.
Oh, this is something that's, this is something that is going to, it happens only in the movies. Now, no doubt it's happened in real life as well, like with, you accidentally send an email to everybody at work and stuff like that. It's like, yes, that can happen. It just doesn't happen as frequently or as accidentally as it's portrayed here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you basically nailed all of the character types, among the four friends. It's like you've got Jim, you've got Oz, who's kind of dumb. He's a jock, but he's kind of dumb, but he's also sweet. And then Kevin's kind of a douchebag. And I mean, he's a douchebag because of the fact that he feels like he and Vicky, played by Tara Reid, should be further along in the process and have had sex by this time than they are.
Yeah, he takes her for granted.
Yeah.
And he really only has one mission with her, and that's to go all the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I like about this is the way one of the nice things about this is that it really shows different levels and the way those levels adapt and change because of circumstances, whether it's self-inflicted or not, of how much pressure all of these guys feel about having sex. Like, Kevin obviously is very all of them feel some pressure to a certain extent because of, Kevin feels that way because of how long he's been with Vicky. He's like, well, why hasn't this happened yet? I mean, part of it is because of the fact that he is incapable of saying "I love you" to her.
Yeah.
So
or he's not actively looking for love. He's actively hoping to score with her when he's not ready to. Excuse me. He's not ready to find his feelings towards her. He's trying to feel towards her.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's very prevalent when say Sherman comes downstairs after in the morning after the party.
Yeah.
And he says goodbye to the girl from the other school, and he basically says it's my time, or wait, maybe it was during the party where he says if Sherman gets laid before I do, I can't remember.
So it was during the party when Kevin says that, because
it was right after Sherman closed the door.
Yeah.
And that's right.
It was when Sherman walks down after the party that they make this pact that they're all going to get laid by the end of high school, which they basically have the default as we're gonna all have sex by prom night.
Yeah.
And
Instead of just all them going their willy-nilly ways, trying to score on their own, they're going to come together and help one another.
Yeah, which, sometimes works out for the better, sometimes, most of the time, works out for the worse for one reason or another.
Yeah, by the way, they didn't help Finch at all.
No.
Finch had to help himself. He had to do before that, too.
Yeah. I mean, Finch has Finch has kind of an interesting way of approaching it. I mean, it makes sense that it didn't work, but he also has he's somebody who doesn't really seem to. I think his character. I don't know. I'm trying to think of because you see a lot of change in Oz's character because of Heather, the character played by Mena Suvari, and he sees her initially as a target to be had, which is kind of his MO at the start, and then realizes that it's there's a lot more to it than just that, and it's I need to be doing this for I can't just be thinking about sex about this, and it's this is a girl that I genuinely like and I'm genuinely interested in.
Yeah. A lot of the pressure comes from Stifler, too.
Yeah.
Which, side note, Stifler is one of, just based on American Pie only, not the sequels, he's one of the best supporting characters in the history of comedy.
I would agree with that. I mean, I would certainly.
I didn't want to argue with you today.
Yeah. No, I would genuinely agree with that, and I mean, I think he's somebody who he's an obnoxious character, but that's why he's so funny, and that's why he's so enjoyable in this movie.
And I think he fully represents the whole, say their year, their class, peer pressure all in one character, because he's the one telling them time to get laid. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
You guys are jerks. This is funny. Ha ha. I think he is the physical embodiment of the peer pressure they feel as being a part of being the 17 or 18-year-olds that they are.
Yeah, and he also is somebody who he bases everything on his ideas and his wants and stuff like that. He basically gives Jim arguably the worst advice ever, because he's the one who's basically he's basically the one who suggests the webcam to him when it comes to Nadia, played by Shannon Elizabeth. And it's that ends up being obviously the worst thing possible, and it really is. That scene is, I watched that scene very carefully. I didn't forget about it, but it's I kind of forgot about it, because it's a scene that, and we can go ahead and get into this. That scene now would be you couldn't really do that scene now, because I have that in my notes. Yeah, you couldn't do that scene now, and really you could question how much you should have done that scene then, because basically he's doing this without Nadia's consent.
Yes.
And that's an important distinction. That's very bad. Yeah. I will say, however, and it's weird because of the fact that it's I will say, right after as I was watching the movie, it occurred to me that yes, what he's doing with the webcam is wrong. Ultimately, and the thing is, it's on the one hand, he does get punished because he's the one who ultimately gets humiliated.
Yes.
Through what happened, him premature, him being premature, not once but twice in front of her. But also, it occurred to me yesterday that in a way while that initial humiliation happened, like that's also sort of the reason that Michelle, the Allison Hannigan character, was interested
Willing
in
to
going
have
out with him.
Yeah.
And
But
I definitely have a lot to talk about with Michelle, because she's the reason I love American Pie 2 as much as I do, because of how much
absolutely.
they expanded on her character. And I definitely had, and part of it is, yes, part of it was Buffy bias at the start because of the fact that Allison Hannigan was Willow and Buffy, and
Was?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm messing with you. But before we move on to Allison Hannigan real quick,
yes,
there's one thing that's been glossed over for years that I don't think anybody's brought up unless I just haven't heard it and seen it.
okay.
With the webcam is filming her getting naked. Is she 18?
That
is this child
yeah.
porn?
Yeah, I mean,
that thought didn't occur to me until I was watching it the other night, because I haven't seen it in
I didn't even think about
4 years.
I didn't even think about that.
Like, she's a high school student. There's possibilities.
She's a high school. Yeah, she is a high school student, and even if she's a senior, could mean that she was 17 at the time.
Yeah, but still, that's still child porn here in the States.
Yeah, that's that. I don't think I've ever really heard anybody bring that up. And that's something that's another thing that really adds to the problematic nature of that scene in general. Now,
but we're also looking through the filter of 2019 versus 1999.
True, but
in 1999, that was probably that and the pie scene were the two most popular scenes, I'm sure, amongst the young men that were the target audience for the film.
And honestly, but the thing is that at least in the pie scene, the only thing that is being objectified is an inanimate, piece of food. And yes, it's raunchy, and it's a bit skeevy to think about, but at the same time, that's still, you got David Lawrence, who wrote the music, doing like his faux porn music, and there are a lot of things about this that are really, the idea that, is Jim's dad coming home at like a time that Jim wouldn't have necessarily realized that he was coming home at during that.
Right.
Because it's
he was a lawyer, right?
Something like that.
I don't remember. Yeah, because he was a lawyer for the Beta House, in the Beta House movie. He was like the fraternity's lawyer. So yeah, I guess lawyers probably have a little bit of a relaxed schedule.
Yeah. So it's like, so how did Jim think that was a good idea for any reason? But I mean,
why not take the pie upstairs?
Yeah, exactly. But but I mean, at least with that, it's like the only thing being violated is a piece of food. And
hilariously, though,
it's very hilarious. And
when Jim's dad says, "We'll tell your mother that
we'll just tell her we ate it." We ate it all.
We ate it all.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that just it just made me snort the other night.
Yeah. Yeah, that scene still works for the most part, but yeah, I didn't even think about Nadia's age when it comes to the webcam scene. But yeah, I mean that adds a little bit more problematic. But I mean, I will say, like, Shannon Elizabeth in this movie is basically just being objectified. I mean, there's not really a whole lot about her character in this movie. She's just somebody. She's the object of Jim's lust. Is basically
and a lot of other guys in the because Stifler even kind of flirts with her when he's doing the rounds at the party.
Yeah,
sort of.
Mm-hmm. And but I will say, like, during that scene with the webcam, it's like I like the fact that she basically, turns the tables on Jim, and it's like, okay, you're going to embarrass me in this way, and she's not even fully aware of the way that he's embarrassing her. It's like, let's see what you have.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that's a very movie. Again, it's another very movie thing. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily something that would happen in real life.
Right.
But at the same time, it's something that it really shifts some of the bounce in that scene, which still, which we've established has issues with it, but at the same time, it ends in a way where it doesn't end in the way that Jim is expecting it to.
Right.
And that's so it's sort of a form of movie justice.
Yes.
And yeah, so that was.
And when he shows up to school next day, when people are all just like, he doesn't understand what's going on, and he comes out smiling onto the property, and then people are just start mocking him, and his smile goes away, and then right before he goes into the school, there's a girl, a female dancing in front of him. That girl, I wish I knew her name, because that girl was awesome. Yeah. Just that dance she did with him, it made me laugh so much.
Yeah. The women in the movie are they obviously don't have quite the comedic material that the guys do. But I mean, I think they definitely have their moments, and this may be some of Tara Reid's most enjoyable work on screen, I think.
You don't like the Sharknado films?
I mean, I've only seen the first one, but
I'm joking, man.
Yeah.
she's lost something. She wasn't really good in this.
Yeah.
She definitely, like, I don't mean to dog on her, but her acting is not great.
No.
It's very, very high school play-ish.
Yeah. I mean, it also doesn't help that, like, she's not really, she's not written to give much, have much to do, like, especially when it comes to, her relationship with Kevin. Like, she has moments of calling him out and stuff like that, but it's like the biggest call moments Kevin is called out when it comes to Vicky come from Natasha Lyonne's character as Vicky's best friend, and Natasha Lyonne is fantastic in this movie. She's always good.
Yeah, I call her the Oracle.
Yeah,
because she's the one that just, like, she always has the answer.
Yeah, I mean, in a way she's sort of the equivalent of Stifler, where it's like she seems like she knows more about, this. She knows more about sex than everybody else, but the difference between her and Stifler, obviously, is that Stifler is, he's obnoxious and he's very stereotypical search and destroy when it comes to sex, and like Natasha's character she's more knowing and intelligent.
I feel like she had a very slutty junior high and high school, but the last couple of years she's mellowed out and matured, and and she's using her wisdom to her advantage. Also, I like to imagine that she has this weird Freaky Friday incident with her daughter, and in the real what was her character's name again?
Oh, what's
Natasha Lyonne's character?
I can't remember.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think that is it. That is it. Yeah.
Well, I feel like her mother and her like bumped heads or something, and she's really like 40 on the inside, and she's dealing with these kids that just want to get laid.
Yeah.
And she's just like, ugh, just go do it already. Please, just get out. And they're stuck permanently. Her daughter's off at work right now, in her body. That's the kind of thing. I think there's a hidden movie here that we just haven't seen.
Well, the thing is, it's like, and her character's name is Jessica. It's like, she's somebody who, like, she can be venomous when it comes to, the way these guys act when it comes to sex, and especially when it comes to Kevin. But at the same time, you see the relationship. You see some semblance of the bond that her and Finch have, and it's like, it's really kind of sweet. The idea that she would go along with this for that she would go along with this idea that Finch is like great in bed and stuff like that, and then later on, just say, hey, you know what, I kind of feel bad about taking your money for this, and it's like, here you go, and gives him the flask, and it's like, there's more to that character. I mean, the way you look at it is sort of like, oh well, sort of a Freaky Friday. She's older and she seems. I mean, that's definitely a part of her character that you get hints at, even if it's very subtle hints.
Yeah, I feel like that's why I really love these characters, because they feel like they're very fleshed out. Like, I feel Finch helped her out in a pinch in the past, maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
Like whether it's homework, whether it's somebody bullying her, whatever. Finch was there for her, and I feel like it was her time to return the favor. I feel like there's a history between those two of, platonic admiration towards each other.
Yeah. Maya Severi is really sweet in this movie. Like,
is that how you say your name?
I think that's how you say her name. So
I've been saying Mina Savari for since American Pie.
Actually, you know what? I think you're probably right. I can't remember how I pronounced her. Last name on the American Beauty podcast earlier this year. But
that's
yes,
okay. We'll just call her Heather.
She was, yes, her character's name was Heather, and she's basically the choir girl that Oz falls for. And this is such an opposite of her character in American Beauty, and the idea that she was not only in 2 movies with American in the title in the same year, but the fact that she was in 2 movies named American with characters who couldn't be more different. And she shows some range between those 2 characters.
Yes, she does. It's the choir girl, the bookworm. Her Fridays and Saturday nights are spent watching movies and making cookies. And the goody 2-shoe girl. By the way, that's what I was attracted to in high school. I like the bookworms.
Oh yeah, I mean she's I mean honestly, yeah, she's definitely I would say she's more appealing than probably I think she would be more appealing to me than like Vicky is in if you were going by these characters. I mean, Jessica would be appealing but in a different way because of the fact that the fact that she's so, she'll tell you how it is and basically tell you whenever you're wrong, and she'll help you get on the right path. But yeah, Heather's definitely it's funny seeing the difference between her character and this, which, like you said, is very, very sweet, very to herself, and probably somebody that not a lot of people have noticed, and Oz notices, but for one reason to start out, but then for another reason when he comes to realize that he's fallen for her. And she's just so good.
Like, there's true real feelings there. She's not a conquest anymore.
Yeah. And you compare that with her character in American Beauty, where her character in American Beauty is full of confidence, has so much confidence and so much understanding of how men react to her.
Yes.
And will play into it, but is also very vulnerable.
It's also false confidence.
Yeah.
It's all bullshit. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's one of the things that I noticed in rewatching American Beauty that made that less uncomfortable than it really is, because of the fact that it's like, if it were just a matter of, her character's, just a girl that, Kevin Spacey's character's, jonesing for her, and there's not much to her, it would be really it's still really uncomfortable because it's essentially the Lolita story. It's a riff
Yes.
on Lolita is what it is. But if that character does not have a personality or more personality than the type of personality that she does, then it's even more uncomfortable. But because of the fact that you understand her character's point of view, that's what ultimately it's still uncomfortable, but it's also very human.
Yes.
And so that's why, and the fact that she could show such variety of emotions between these two performances in the same year in a couple months span is really impressive.
Right. Plus, she was in the Carrie sequel as well that year.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. She was the yeah, she's the girl who kills herself in the beginning.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that.
She must have had a busy 98. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, yeah, it's been several months since I'd watched The Rage Carrie 2, but yeah, I completely I I completely forgot she was in the beginning of that. And that brings us to the character Michelle, and I will admit I'll probably be geeking out a little bit about this character.
Are you gonna gush?
I'm probably gonna gush a little bit, although I know I've gushed a bit more on one of my first attempts at recording a fan commentary, which has never been released fully, because of the fact that it's like it ended up really being more about a couple of scenes and stuff like that that Allison Hannigan did in the movie. Is one of my first attempts at doing a fan commentary when I started doing that in 2003 was for American Pie 2. And the reason was because of the way it brought Michelle, played by Allison Hannigan, to the forefront and essentially turned her into the romantic lead in these movies, or at least the theatrical movies. And this, and you look at her in the first American Pie, it's really kind of interesting. I sort of saw something in the character before that I didn't really think about until this past rewatch for the sake of this podcast. So what she's primarily known for is she's a band geek, and she basically, she's this movie's this movie's version of a band geek. And she starts out everything she says basically with this one time at band camp, and it goes like that and that and that. And more or less everything she says starts out with that. And then there's a scene at the prom where her and Jim have gone to the prom together, and she gets into a raunchier story and basically says the whole punchline to that run of jokes, which is,
what she did with her flute.
Yeah, which is, by the way, would be the most uncomfortable fucking thing imaginable.
Yeah, it's got me puzzled. What end did she go? No, never mind.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna go there. It's it's troubling.
Allison Hannigan was your Willow at that time, right?
She was Willow on Buffy at the time, and
okay,
yeah, that's how I knew her.
That I didn't watch Buffy until like 2014.
Yeah.
Like one episode, I didn't see one episode until like 2014. To me, when I saw that movie, like we first see her in the very beginning when the boys are walking through the hallways, when she's like, it'd be funny if today in band class we'll play our instruments backwards. Like I was like, is that the girl from My Stepmother's an Alien?
Yes, that's and Seth Green, who played her boyfriend at one point on Buffy.
Right. So yeah, so that's our two different takes on that. You knew her from more recent work.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, is that the kid from that that family friendly sci-fi movie?
Yeah. Yeah, which I don't remember if I've ever seen that in its entirety, but yeah, that's how I knew her from, and yeah, so I mean, admittedly, yes, part of it is because of the fact that I'll admit, yes, part of it when I first saw the movie was because of the fact that she's a band geek, and it's the band thing. I was in band for 4 years in high school and 3 years in middle school, so it's like, yeah, okay, that was part of it for me. I'm not gonna lie,
I had 5 years worth of band.
but
What instrument were you?
Trombone.
Trombone? I was gonna predict percussion.
Nope, trombone.
I was. Can you guess mine? Let's do it. Let's play a game.
Ooh, this is. Tuba?
Oh, is it because I'm fat? No, I was saxophone.
Okay.
Okay. I played soprano, alto, mainly alto, tenor, and baritone.
I don't even. When I think of woodwinds, for some reason, saxophone didn't even cross my mind. But it's like I didn't necessarily see as a trumpet player or French horn, but French it's like, yeah. But okay, saxophone, yeah. Okay.
Sorry to go on a tangent,
no, you're fine. You're fine. And the thing that so there was part of it that appealed to me at the time. What continued to appeal to me about her character was not just the fact that she was a band geek, but that the way that they treated the character in American Pie 2, she basically became the romantic lead, and I really liked the way that she continued to bring something to the character throughout the movie, throughout the first three movies at least. It's been a while since I've seen American Reunion, so I do want to rewatch that at some point. The thing that I noticed this time, watching the movie, and something that I really was struck by when it comes to her, it's like, yes, it's basically her character is basically, throughout jokes about, this one time at band camp and stuff like that, this running motif of that, and you see the climax of that when it comes to what she reveals to Jim at the end of at prom. And basically the thing that I like about that, and the thing that I didn't really think about until this time, like even though those one time at band camp are really basically, they're supposed to be like little one-hit jokes on the same idea. What she's also doing, and it comes to a scene where they're walking up to Stifler's house after prom, and she realizes, it's like, hey, you haven't told me any of your memories. Yeah. And it occurred to me, for some reason it just didn't register with me until this time, hearing that line, where it's like, what she's doing throughout the entire film with these band camp stories is she's basically telling us about the memories that she's going to carry with her after high school.
Yes.
And it's like, that's what, and so we've been learning about this character the entire time through stories that she enjoys, stories that have an impact on her. And it's like,
yeah, and they're all, every time she says it was one time at band camp, they're all you had to be there stories.
Yeah.
And it sets Jim up for, like, just here's another one.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, it wasn't, and you tell, and he tells, she's been telling these stories, and it's like, oh my God, it's like we're getting to know this character. We didn't even necessarily realize it. And so when she does have her big punchline for the band camp stories, and then tells Jim, are we going to have sex? And it's like, this is her creating another memory for her.
Yes.
And it's like, this is, it's like you can see that she's in the way she brings up, so are we going to screw soon?
Get Nancy.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell that she's on this same journey that Jim is. We just didn't realize it.
Yep,
we didn't see it from her perspective.
Yeah, we didn't see her as a sexual being.
Yeah. And so the way she approaches the big scene, and the way it pays off by the fact that it's like she's gone by the next morning, which is hilarious. It's like he has to realize it's like
in the act of having sex, she was very rough and very dominant towards
it's like,
Jim.
You think you know me, you don't know me. And that's the thing that was so great about that. And I
like to imagine she lost her virginity that night too.
Yeah.
Because she mentions, she says the line, "What, you don't think I know how to get myself off?"
Yeah.
Like, she never mentioned, like, you don't think, she never said, "What, you don't think I haven't had sex before?" Mm-hmm. I like to imagine her view of sex comes from aggressive porn. Like that whole, "What's my name? Say my name." Very, like, she's into a certain kind of, like, dominate, like she would be a dominatrix, which she almost was in American Reunion, because the scene where Jim's all dressed up like in the leather shorts, and he gets chased out of the house by the neighbor girl that he used to babysit's boyfriend, and she comes out dressed like a dominatrix, and and he's got chains.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, I definitely need to see Reunion again.
She's definitely she's into that kind of kink, but I don't think I think she was into it then, but she only explored it through porn, and that's why she was very aggressive with Jim.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, ultimately, it's like it. So in that respect, it's like it makes me like the character, realizing all of this, that it's like, okay, she's basically been telling us about herself this entire time, and it's like we're learning about this character through her experiences with high school, and in high school, and the memories that she's going to take out of high school, and it's like it makes me like the way that they wrote the character even more, because it does add layers that we didn't expect.
Yes.
And I mean, so it really almost, and the thing is, so it almost feels like, even though, who knows if they necessarily had this in mind, that it makes sense that she ended up being the lead female character in these movies.
Yeah. And I really enjoy, like you said, it gives it depth. We find her very cold at the end of when Jim wakes up and he's cuddling Godzilla.
Yeah.
Or just an inflatable dinosaur or whatever. She's gone. It's kind of very cold. But we find out in part 2 that she left because she didn't want an awkward goodbye. And I feel like she really did like Jim, like genuinely liked Jim. Yeah. But she didn't want to be there for the morning after, where I feel it was more protecting her feelings than was protecting his, even though she says the opposite in part 2. I think she had feelings towards Jim, and that was why she ran off.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched part 2. I need to do that. I need to watch all of the
main 4.
The main 4 again. Well, I mean, I've just watched American Pie, but I mean 2, Wedding, and then Reunion. Yeah, I definitely need to see those again.
Well, like I told you, I may have had an experiment where I watched part 1 and directly after I watched part 2 to see if it would work good for, say, just they never had part 2, 3, the straight to DVD sequels. Yeah, it was just, if there was just those 2 movies 13 years apart, it does work as a sequel, except for there are some jokes that there's some lines that just don't. It would be confusing to somebody who hadn't seen the other ones.
Yeah,
like when Oz says, "I'm sorry, I missed your wedding." Like it's a nothing line, but it's like, yeah, Oz wasn't in American Wedding. That's right.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. No, that's right. No, I couldn't remember whether it was. That's right. Kevin was in American Wang. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oz
It was Oz that missed the Wang. I forgot about that.
I think it was a scheduling conflict with some other movie like Rollerball or some crap.
Oh God.
I don't remember.
I don't even. Yeah.
You want to review that one someday?
No.
Okay.
Okay. That would be interesting if we did both the original and the remake. That would be interesting to do.
Was that James Caan?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we did the original and the remake, I think that would be interesting. I don't know if without that motivation, I don't know that I could ever get myself to ever watch
life is short. Let's
the
not
remake again, because
life's too short.
Is so
Let's
awful.
not watch Rollerball again.
Oh dear Lord, it's God. John McTiernan really John McTiernan is a director who just I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, it was like hit and miss for the longest time.
Well, I mean, he had one of the greatest 3-movie runs in history with Predator, Die Hard, and Hunt for Red October, and then oh hey, the Rollerball sequel.
Yay!
Yay!
What everybody's been asking for.
Yeah, with the kid from American Pie.
Yeah, not the one that everybody liked.
Yeah.
The weird jock that was uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Allison's
character is great, and I think American Pie is a wonderful Act 1 for Michelle.
Yeah. I mean, part 2, it's the thing that I love about that is that it's you see how difficult it is for her to be helping Jim. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're talking about, the sequel, but it's you can see how difficult it is for her to be basically helping Jim try to score with Nadia.
Yeah.
And it's you see that, and it's you can see that difficulty on her, and it's it's one of the most engaging parts of there's a reason that character just resonated with me in that movie, and it's it was because of the fact that they just wrote her the right way. They wrote that situation the right way, where it's Jim's still figuring shit out, and he's still getting it wrong. It's Nadia is Nadia is the fantasy you have in high school. Michelle's the one that you're going to marry.
It's lust versus love.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. And it's I think, as much as I still like American Pie, I think overall, I probably like American Pie 2 more. And it's not just because of how they expand the character Michelle. I just think I feel like I like that the way that they bring the characters back in that one a little bit more. I mean, I do think American Pie is probably the better film overall. But on
a personal level, you enjoy part 2 more.
Yeah.
Do you think it was because it was more age appropriate for you? Because they were sort of 20, 21? Wait, no, they were younger because it was only after 1 year of high school.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily that. I don't know if it was necessarily that, but I think the fact that the first one was as sincere and not just not devoted to being just bawdy and raunchy. The fact that you could sort of see that this was these were movies that were going to wear their hearts on their sleeve, even though they're kind of bawdy. I think that's one of the things that I really liked about it. And yeah, I mean the fact that I was coming out of college, I think that probably helped. So, and there are a lot of things about that time of my life. It's I was very much in that was very much a transitional point in my life, but it was one where it's like American Pie 2 did have an impact on me. And I mean,
Same here.
yeah. And American Pie, like when I watched it, like I was in the middle of my my trip to Ohio in 2000 with my mother, because of the fact that my grandfather was he was ill with cancer, and he died during that trip. And it's like that helped.
Ouch.
It was nice to have that escape with American Pie, and that's kind of how I felt about it. And it's like it was also helped that it was a very pleasant surprise for me. I didn't expect the movie that I got with it.
I'm sorry you had to lose him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it.
What?
Yeah, it was going. Yeah, that was. I will talk more about that at some point. I have a lot of great movie related memories with my grandfather. I definitely want to talk about that at some point.
But maybe not in the raunchy comedy.
Yeah, not when it comes to this movie in particular, but certainly when it comes to other movies. But I mean that'll be a separate episode for the podcast that I'll do at some point.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Getting back to it, like, with the girls, like I don't know if you have anything more to say about Michelle in
No,
American.
that's fine. I was gonna say if you had anything more to say about the movie.
Oh, I got a few notes that I haven't touched on yet. As far as the girls are written, as the guys are written fantastically.
Yeah.
And the girls are written fair. And to be fair, it's hard to be a male, especially in your 20s. I think they were in their late 20s at the time.
Yeah.
When they wrote, who's the writer? Was it Hertz?
Yeah, it was Hertz.
Adam Hertz.
Yeah.
When he wrote it, I think he was in his mid to late 20s. It's hard to put yourself as a man in your mid to late 20s in the mind frame of a female senior in high school. But
Yeah.
I think he did a fair enough job with. He did more so with Michelle, eventually.
Yeah.
But it's a good setup, and I think he did fair with all the girls. But the guys, he did a great job on.
Yeah.
But another thing I like about the filming of it was there's subtle jokes throughout the movie, and just for a couple examples that do you remember when a short-haired blonde girl asks Kevin about Finch's how big his manhood is?
Yeah.
And he tells him, "Oh yeah, it's huge." And she like he's staring like off in the distance, like what the hell's going on? And she walks away. In the background, you can see her put up her hands, like like you're measuring the size of a fish. Like and she gets all excited, and the girls get all excited.
Well, the funniest thing about the thing that I love about that is that moment in particular is that when because Finch has just told them, it's like anything you hear about me, just say that it's true.
Yeah.
And so this girl comes up to him after that, and she's like, "Is that Paul Finch?" It's like, "Is it true that he's equipped?" Or I think that's how she described it.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
and his first reaction is Paul Finch
showers with
his bathing suit on, and you could see sort of like the deflation in her face,
Yes.
where it's like, and then he remembers, and it's like, oh yeah, it's fine, or I don't remember what he says.
I think he says it.
Yeah.
He's huge.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Thank you," and she moves along, and they get all excited. And my other favorite one, I did not catch this joke until about my fourth or fifth viewing.
Mm-hmm.
It was when Jim's dad like knocks on the door to bring in the porn magazines, the more risque magazines. Jim's messing with condoms.
Yeah.
And he scurries to get the condoms in the drawer. When they're done with that whole thing where Jim's dad opens the drawer and sees the open condom, and he's like, he's like safer than a tube sock. He closes the door and he walks away. When he walks away, he has one of the condoms stuck on his ass.
Oh my God, I didn't even.
It's on the back of his pants. I didn't even notice it until like my
even notice that.
As he's walking out, and Jim notices it. Because I can see it now because I've watched it like 30 times.
Yeah.
If he walks out, Jim notices a condom and he deflates too in that moment. To me, that's my favorite subtle joke. I don't know if it was an accident or if it was planned, like they put stickum or some kind of stuff on his pants, but it was fantastic. He's got a condom stuck to the back of his pants.
I mean, Eugene Levy is basically the MVP of pretty much any movie that he's in.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with him before this movie?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up with reruns of SCTV.
Okay.
I saw like Armed and Dangerous. I was a big fan of Waiting for Guffman.
Yeah, I had seen Waiting for Guffman, but I hadn't gotten into Christopher Guest. I mean, obviously this was before Best in Show anyway. But I mean, I'd seen Waiting for Guffman in theaters actually, and I really liked it, but it's like I didn't really, stay. It wasn't a movie that I rewatched necessarily until Best in Show, and by then I was hooked on what Christopher Guest and them were doing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I had not watched SCTV. I need to watch SCTV at some point because of the fact that so many great people have been a part.
That's
of
where I fell in love with Bob and Doug McKenzie, Ed Grimley. When I was a kid, I would do the Ed Grimley dance, and I'd be stupid with it. But John Candy was the reason why I watched, because they would show SCTV after Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
and I would stay up on Friday nights watching my midnight creature double feature, like black and white horror theater on my local channels. But after I'd watch SNL, and then after SNL there was SCTV, and that's where I called it the John Candy Show, because I was still young.
Yeah,
but I absolutely love John Candy. I idolize that man. Same with Chris Farley. And
yeah, I rewatched The Great Outdoors recently. It's like, oh my god, I miss him so much.
Yeah, he was so good. I hate that he's going to fade into obscurity sooner than later. But yeah, that joke with him is my favorite. And they could have easily did a close up so we saw the jokes, like with the girl holding up her hands and the condom. And there's a couple other ones that I didn't write down, but I really like that they filmed it that way, because it's like a little bit more that you could find with the movie after a couple viewings.
Yeah, and because of the fact that it's like a lesser filmmaker would, and I mean that points to the fact that like the Whites brother, or I think they're brothers. Although I mean I know the movie is credited to Paul, but I know Chris has an uncredited directing credit on it.
Right.
I mean it's funny because arguably Chris got the bigger opportunities after this. Because of the fact that he ended up freaking directing a Twilight movie at this 10 years
that's
later.
Right. He did.
But I think did they both? I can't remember. Did they both direct with Owlboy, or was it just Paul?
Oh man, I don't know.
I know I can't remember whether it was one of them or both of them, but yeah. I think that was because they didn't direct any of the sequels. I don't think they directed two.
I think they were executive producers, or at least co-producers.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I mean they were producers on it, but I don't think they ever directed. I don't think they directed any of the sequels. But but
they both were credited as directors on About a Boy.
Okay, all right. So, but I like what you're getting at. And there's, and it's like lesser filmmakers would have made those
the zoom ins
and stuff like that to emphasize the joke, as opposed to, what they did, which is like, oh, you'll catch it if you, really pay attention to it. If not, that's fine. But
some of my favorite jokes in films are really subtle, really subtle stuff. It doesn't have to be disaster movie, here's a joke in your face kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's more, I wouldn't say sophisticated, I just think it's more, it's a comedy that doesn't call you kind of stupid.
Yeah.
It doesn't think the audience is like John and JQ dumbass. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's something that really it is a movie that has a little bit more for everybody than I think you might expect. I mean, yeah, teenagers and stuff like that are more the audience for this, but I mean the fact that like I can put this on in my 40s now and still enjoy the movie is really a credit to how well they told this story and really made a movie that does stand up pretty well over time.
I do. The last note I have here is about the ending.
Yeah.
I'd like to touch on the ending before we close it up here.
Okay.
I don't think all of them should have had sex that night. I think it was kind of lazy screenwriting. I know Oz doesn't tell the boys that him and Heather had sex in the boathouse, but he still had sex that night. I really think Oz should not have had sex that night. I really feel like I know it's probably a more satisfying, happy ending that all the boys got to lose their V card on prom night, but I feel it's kind of out of Heather's character to just jump in the sack with him, especially after the rocky kind of relationship they had.
Yeah,
because it was only a couple months before graduation that he joined the choir, and she and him were already on again, off again. I don't feel like her character would have had sex with him that night.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I mean, you see them holding each other, and it's like it's obvious that they're naked under the sleeping bag on the pier.
Yeah.
But I never really felt like I mean, maybe it's because of the fact that I'm sort of taking the fact that Oz, doesn't tell them, about having sex at face value. I never necessarily thought that they had sex that night. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it is kind of obvious that they probably did.
Yeah, because I believe Mina was underage, right? Because she was underage in American Beauty too. Wasn't there kind of a bit of a scandal because she showed her breasts?
Yes, that's right. I can't.
Or was
remember...
it? Or was that Thora? Was Thora underage?
Oh God, how? Wait a minute.
Oh man, I just opened up a wormhole. Huh?
Yeah, I need to just.
Well, I'll do some research later, but yeah, I think Heather was being same with Finch. We never see Finch touch Stifler's mom because he was 17. We never see them even touch hands or engage in any kind of emotional or seductive anything other than looking at each other and talking.
Right.
Because it was just an underage thing.
Okay, so she was actually 20 when both American Beauty and American Pie came out. So yeah, they were. She would have been of age when she was filming those.
Okay, so what?
Yeah, it might have been with Thora Birch.
I know she was like emancipated when she was like 14 or 15, right? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's another podcast. And
yeah,
celebrity young or child actor emancipations.
Yeah. Oh God. And we can tie it in with talking about Rob Reiner's North.
Wait, I missed another one of my notes before we move on. Talking about how this movie changed for at least a long time, even to this day, the vernacular of the United States, like or even around the world, for all I know. The word MILF. It existed as a porn category, but it was never brought to the forefront until this film. This film popularized the MILF.
I'd never heard of it. I had never heard it before. So yeah, that was
that and this one time at band camp.
Yeah.
I still say that crap because I'll be like this one time when I'm telling people stories, and I'll be like at band camp.
Yeah.
And then I'll just move on with my story.
Yeah.
And I did go to band camp.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do have memories from band camp. Not necessarily dirty ones, but I mean I have memories of band camp. I mean, yeah, ours were pretty pretty intense. But
we didn't get to go to a campground. Our band camp was a daily camp thing that we went home. We went home at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we would. I know we would have, like, we're going way off topic, but I mean, whatever. We'll talk about. So I had, and just be really quick. I had we would typically have like a week band camp where we would go home. It was just at the high school, and then we would have a week-long band camp at West Georgia College. So we started band camp early. Like we started rehearsing early for like marching bands, stuff like that. So like we would start rehearsing in like July, at the end of July. But I mean, we would also get into school like mid-August or so. So
okay.
Now they go back to high school in late July, which blows my freaking mind. But yeah. Well, I mean, did you have anything else you had to say about American Pie?
I'm pretty sure that's it. Okay. I love how they changed the vernacular of us, the way we speak, and I absolutely love this movie, and I will stand by. I think it is the '90s version of Breakfast Club. Okay. And I'll even add the little asterisk that it shares it with
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused. I'll call it the late '90s version of Breakfast Club.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it probably is closer to this generation's Breakfast Club than Dazed and Confused, just because I have a feeling Dazed and Confused is like what our generation probably caught up with Dazed and Confused later in life, as opposed to necessarily seeing it during high school and stuff like that.
Right. And I saw it on VHS like right after it came out on tape. Mm-hmm. So I was like 14 or 15, and I didn't really understand the partying until I started partying, and I watched it again. And I was like, this movie's awesome. It's not just a great soundtrack and a timepiece.
Yeah.
Or a period piece.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy American Pie, and it's like, God, it's funny. One of the things that occurred to me, earlier this year when I was thinking about the summer of '99, like, this was a very weird summer because there was like, it's not summer in the way that we think about summer now, because the way we think of summer now typically revolves around big blockbusters. There really were not a lot of big blockbusters that summer. And it's because of the fact that everything basically was trying to get out of the way for Star Wars.
Yep.
But you had Austin Powers, Spy Who Shagged Me, and you had American Pie, and like, so you had two big comedies. I mean, this American Pie was sort of like the capper on a first half of 1999 with a lot of like the late 90s teen movie boom. Basically was at its peak in 99, because you had Varsity Blues, you had She's All That, you had Cruel Intentions. Drive Me Crazy, that's right. You had 10 Things I Hate About You, and then you had Election, which was a little bit of an artier version of a teen movie, but it's still a high school set movie. And then you had American Pie. And so it's like, it really sort of put a bow on this era of this run of teen movies that, I mean, people still reference for one reason or another. And it's like, it's not a bad run of teen movies either. It's a pretty decent run, actually. And yeah, American Pie is definitely a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Well, Marv, thank you very much for joining me once again. It's always good to talk to you, and I know we're gonna have at least one more for 1999 coming up, and I'm gonna be.
Which one's that?
I would be Any Given Sunday, if I remember.
Yes, Any Given Sunday. I didn't know if you want to bury the lead or not.
No, that's fine.
I'm still trying to figure out which one you're talking about. on on Facebook when you're like, I'm watching a movie for it's forgotten, but it's oh man,
I
it's a mystery.
thought I eventually well, that podcast is coming out tomorrow anyway, so
Oh,
yeah.
I'll be waiting.
It's
I'll keep it a mystery. Even if you revealed it, I missed it, so it's gonna be a mystery for me. But thank you for having me. I absolutely love talking movies with you.
Yeah. I'd like to thank Marv Dickey for joining me today on the podcast. It's always good to talk to him about movies. As we talked about, we're also going to have Any Given Sunday, the Oliver Stone football movie from 1999 to discuss on the podcast. And we might also make room for another Oliver Stone movie. I don't know. We'll try. For now, this is Brian Scuttle with the Sonic Cinema podcast. Hit me up on patreon.com/Sonic Cinema for more on movie reviews, including my very first movie review that I sent out to people, and more special little tidbits like that, as well as some more on the book and other things. The class of 1999 will be continuing with one of the most controversial movies of 1999 and the last film from a great filmmaker, as well as one of the most influential cult comedies of a generation. For now, this is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day.